Good afternoon and welcome to today's live lecture. My name is Patricia Simpson. I'm the Director of Political and Online Training here at the Leadership Institute. Today's topic is, where do I find the money? It's a fundraising lecture going to be presented by Nancy Boxker, who is the author of Go Fish, How to Catch and Keep Contributors. It's a how-to guide. It's wonderful. She is a professor at George Washington University's School of Applied Politics, and she teaches fundraising there. And she is into passion-driven leadership, and she travels the world inspiring women to run for office and become leaders. Nancy, I don't want to take up much of your time with small talk and let you get right into it. And just to let everyone know, these are in fact lemonade and water. So we are not Kathy Lee and Hoda.
No, we thought we'd do the Kathy Lee and Hoda just to make fundraising easier for you today, but instead we're going to do it like everyone should. And that is, if you don't raise the money, you're not going to win a campaign. And there's just so many people who just have such great anxiety over it. You know, we often ask people, what would you rather do? Have all of your, go to the dentist, have all of your teeth pulled out, throw in some root canals, and have all this done without anesthesia, or ask people for money. And most people do choose the, oh my gosh, just send me to the dentist. And while I know that one of your previous webinars focused on how to ask for money, today we're going to have a much broader conversation about how to build a donor base. Too many candidates will call me in early October, 30 days before an election, and go, gee, Nancy, I haven't raised any money at home. I really haven't asked anybody, and gee, can you try to raise some money for me in Washington? And I just go, you know, you've got to start at home. Mark Hanna, back in 1896, said, there are two things that are important in politics. The first one is money, and I can't remember the second one. So, like it or not, fundraising has to be part of your everyday plan. And Mark Hanna coined this phrase more than 100 years ago. So fundraising and politics, it goes hand in hand. Some interesting statistics. Of the people who voted in the election, and this is 2010, I've not seen the 2012 numbers, but we know that in 2010, 38% of the United States didn't vote. Yeah, there weren't two wars going on and Obamacare and all this. No, they just decided it wasn't important enough to vote. Now, 60% did vote. But keep in mind, of that total, only 3% of the American population vote and gives money. So this is a very narrow audience that's going to donate to your campaign. So people go, you know, how do I start? So let's take a look at, just as we go to the next slide, let's take a look at this next slide. This is a pyramid of what I call fundraising nirvana. This is a very quick synopsis of what motivates people to give money. You have some people who are only going to give you money if they're personally asked, either on the phone, a personal visit, or from a finance committee member, and that's what we're really going to focus on today. And I lovingly say, these are big donors. You've got to go to big donors. Big donors equal big egos. They expect you, as the candidate, to go visit him or her and ask for money. We all know who those players are in a community. Second, we'll just keep going. So
I just want to make sure that you're changing the slides.
So okay. Oh, I thought they were doing. I thought they were doing that over there.
No,
sorry.
Okay.
That's why I went to the next slide. I apologize. Really, we have pink lemonade and water in our cups. So at the top of the pyramid, there, as I said, there are some people who are only going to give money to your campaign if they're personally asked. And yes, of course, these would be big donors. And I call them I say they have big egos, but in the most loving manner. But these are the people that you have to go see. These are the people that are important for a finance committee member to see, because that's important for peer-to-peer fundraising. People do and are more willing to do things if someone who is a peer has asked them. When we look at Girl Scout cookie sales right now, There's a reason a lot of moms and dads take those Girl Scout cookies into the office, because people want to help out their friends. Yes, they also love delicious Thin Mints, but
Who doesn't?
yes, but if you want to sell a lot of cookies, you've got to ask your friends, neighbors, and colleagues. And again, when we come back, this is what we're really going to focus on, is how do we put that finance team together to help you raise money. At the second part of this in the pyramid, in the middle, and I just need a little,
We just use the space bar.
okay, we'll do the space bar. Very good, thank you. In the middle, there are going to be some people who will only give you money if there's a fundraising event to go to. And in my world of politics, I've learned these tend to be mid-dollar donors. It might be someone who goes to a $250 cocktail party, $100 barbecue, $25 ice cream social. Now, a fundraising event can be a motivating factor for some of our larger donors if you do something special, which is why we always do 2 or 3 tiered events. So you have the $1,000 private reception with photo op, followed by the $100 barbecue. And as I remind people, don't ever underestimate the power of a photo op. People love to have their picture taken with candidates and special guests. I've never met an independent insurance agent anywhere in the world who didn't have the wall of me. You know, here I am with the dog catcher, here I am with the city councilman, here's my certificate from the JCs. But people like that recognition. So you can get some bigger dollars at a fundraising event if you have a separate special event beforehand. Now, the next step, and we're not going to cover this today, but there are people who respond in direct mail and telemarketing. These tend to be, in campaigns, more of our low-dollar donors. This is the little old lady that sends you $1 and a piece of direct mail because she wants to make the world better for her children and grandchildren. So let's take this to the next step. Those big donors like to give money because they do like that access. They like the fact that they know the candidate, that again, a peer has asked them, you know, a car dealer is asking for money from another car dealer. But we really want to network in this very prominent part of the community. When we look at the numbers, a lot of the 3% who will give money and vote of the American population fall into this category. Then we have those mid-dollar donors who go to events. Those tend to be your most social donors. This is all about friend-to-friend fundraising. If there's a fundraising event at Patty's house, Patty is going to call me, call Jane, call Heather, call David, and say, I'm having an event at my home. Will you please come?
Real quick question. What percentage of your time, obviously that you can find money in the top, middle, and lower tiers of a donor base, what percentage of your time should you focus on each of the 3 tiers?
Well, as a candidate, your focus has to be on getting major donors in the door. You have to be on the phone, calling people and asking for the maximum amount that you can. In a federal race, it's now $2,600 in the primary and $2,600 in the general. Now, you have to decide as a candidate what a major donor is. You know, in a federal race, it's anybody who gives $1,000 to $2,600 in my world. But I have worked on a lot of city council races where $100 is considered a major donor. But the only way I'm going to get that $100 is for my candidate to go visit the hardware store owner, right? So your candidate needs to be focused on this time. Your events, you need to have somebody on the campaign who's managing events, because events suck the air out of a campaign because they're so staff heavy. You have to have people selling tickets, you have to have people making arrangements with hotels, and you have to have somebody really out there making sure people come. You know, it really is beyond selling tickets, it's, are you going to come to the event? But it really is a more social event. It's because friends have asked their friends to come. And secondly, people who go to fundraising events tend to be the ones who want some value for their donation. My late father wouldn't give $50 to a state senate candidate unless I told him, Dad, you're going to get to eat some tasty chicken, right? That's why there's donor clubs in different campaigns where people get tchotchkes. Okay, you get a mug if you give $25. And a lot of people tend to roll their eyes at, really, this happens? I've not seen the final 2012 numbers, but I do know in 2008, Barack Obama's campaign made $60 million from the Obama store. So having those kinds of things available, people like to touch, be close to it. So you've got people who will go to an event because it's social. And that's a little bit different than the access of a major donor who really just wants the candidate's time and attention. Now, in the middle, people go to fundraising events. The cost on a fundraising event in the nonprofit world, the industry standard is 30%. In the political world, we can really reduce that to about 12 or 15%. This is not the time to be going to the Ritz-Carlton and getting a ballroom and having open martinis. You have to be very cost conscious when you're raising money at a fundraising event. Finally, those low dollar donors are your most issue-oriented donors. There's a lot more of them, but it's a lot more expensive to bring them in. But it's important for you to understand why you have to diversify your fundraising techniques, because not all people want to come to an event. Some want to just say, hey, I don't have time for an event. I'm happy to send you the check for $1,000, because busy people are busy. But then you want to reach out too. You can't ignore those smaller and medium-sized donors who don't want to go to an event. They don't need your phone call, but they're very happy to send you $25, $30, $40 every time you send them a piece of direct mail. And that is a reason why in our direct mail world, the average donor for the Democratic Party is 70 years old. The average donor to the Republican Party is about 72. So you have to know your audience. So that's just like a quick overview of why it's important to diversify. Which brings us to why it's important to have a finance committee. Now, finance committees are when you get your friends, neighbors, and colleagues to help agree to raise a set amount of money, an achievable goal, and you give them a deadline. If you don't give them a goal and a deadline, it's not going to happen. Too many people, go, oh, I'll go in and I'll ask, do you have a finance committee? And they hem and haw, well, we've got some friends. We get together for lunch. And okay, that's a lunch bunch. You can't just say, hey, go raise me some money and expect it to happen. A good finance committee can raise 60% or more of your overall budget. In Bob McDonald's race, in the governor's race, 4 years ago, he raised about 22 million, 21 million of it came from the finance committee. So it can be a significant amount of money.
Now, when you talk about the finance committees, and I know that you're going to go into them in detail, are people, when you gather your finance committee members, are these people only going out to ask for money from other individuals, or are they acquiring lists? We have a question about various online contributor databases. Will members of your finance committee be gathering that information as well?
Okay, so it depends on where are they getting these online contributor information. I mean, you cannot. It's a felony. You will get in big trouble if you go to the Federal Election Commission and think, gee, I'd like to have a list of everybody who gave $200 more or more to Congressman Frank Wolf. And then you put them in your database and you go, dear Patty, seeing that you gave $1,000 to Frank Wolf, will you give me some? Well, you get into real trouble. The FEC allows campaigns to salt list with fake names so people will know if people are illegally using these lists. And too many people think there's a magic list out there. They make a big mistake of going to some of these online list email brokers, spending a fortune on this magic list that ends up being spam, right? It does not make sense. Good lists have to come organically. So when we recruit that finance committee, and keep in mind a finance committee is friend to friend, neighbor to neighbor, colleague to colleague. It's just like selling Amway products, right? Once somebody said it really is like I teach multi-level marketing. But every individual that you look to, and we're going to talk about recruitment in a few minutes, has their own spheres of influence. If you recruit me to be on a campaign, I have my own friends from college, friends from high school. I do a lot of work in the women's pro-democracy movement, so I have my own sphere of influence. So that's what you want to tap into. One of the things that in the post-mortem of the Obama campaign, one of the things they found is, I might say, how many close friends do you have? And the average person says, I have 2 really close friends. But then they go, well, yeah, but how many friends do you have on Facebook? Well, the answer was the average person has 190 friends on Facebook.
That's it.
That's a sphere of influence, right? Yes, not in my world, right? Where I have 3,100 and some people, not that I keep track. But it is an amazing sphere of influence for me when I want to get a message across, when I want someone to like a page on Facebook, or more importantly, when I want them to donate to a cause that I care about.
Now, all of these tips and advice that you're giving people about finance committees, is the same approach used when you are running an organization or an issue campaign, or is it just strictly for political campaigns?
Well, everything can be, everything is applicable. And I don't want to say it depends, but I do go in and I do this to a lot of nonprofits, right? A lot of nonprofits do not properly utilize their board of directors. And part of it is, well, when we recruited this great board of directors, we never told them that they had to raise money, and now they don't want to. So I always say, okay, let's pretend we're in Star Trek, and I'm going to start some parallel universe where I have a finance committee that will help us raise the money that we need. You need to have a strong board member. And let me tell you, let's go to that, and then we'll go into more detail about the kinds of people we look for when we do recruit, whether it's for a nonprofit, a political organization, or for a campaign. So if you're going to recruit a finance committee, you need to have somebody be in charge. So I'm always looking for a finance chair. And I always ask, what occupation makes the best finance chair for a campaign? Patty, do you know the answer to that?
The best chair for...
Who'd be really good at asking people, motivating people, inspiring them, and has a great Rolodex?
Someone who's really good in sales?
Oh, Patty, you're so smart. Yes, indeed.
It's because I've read Nancy's book, Go Fish, how to catch and keep contributors.
But, it is so true. The most successful finance chairs I have seen for campaigns are people it's headed up by a real estate agent, a stockbroker, my favorite, the independent insurance agents, right? And of course, car dealers, right? The best are used car dealers. Honey, you can't give me $10,000 for this car. What about 9.5? People in sales know how to negotiate. Secondly, they're incredibly resilient. You might as well know only 2 out of about 10 people will say yes when you ask them for money. People in sales think that's great because an insurance agent will cold call 100 people, and right. if 3 people buy the product, they get out a bottle of champagne. And for most people, we go underneath our desk in a fetal position and go, I'm a failure. Salespeople find this just to be really energizing. Mm-hmm. It's a great challenge.
I always say that when I used to train in the grassroots trainings, I would always say that dating is really good practice for fundraising and politics because you're going to be rejected a lot. Mm-hmm. So condition yourself for that.
You are right. I have a student at the Grad School of Political Management in the online program that's very smart. And when he wrote that in his bio, I said, who said, your mom? But I just kind of questioned a little bit. And when he had to write a sales pitch, an elevator pitch. And he wrote back and said, Nancy, I've read more than 20 different types of elevator speeches. Should I use the Harvard Business School model or should I use the Kellogg School? And I said, neither. Go Google Match.com, learn how to write a dating profile, right? How would you approach someone? That is your sales pitch because you're looking to make an emotional connection. So when I find somebody in sales, that person, again, resilient, doesn't take no for an answer, and knows how to negotiate. A lot of times people will go, oh, but Nancy, I need to have the CPA be my be my campaign chair, or they want to have an attorney or a doctor. Well, attorneys and doctors have other people bill clients, and CPAs keep me out of jail, but they're not outgoing people necessarily. I want someone with this big personality, that has somebody who has a big Rolodex, knows lots of people. One of my favorite was a gentleman named Roy Smith in Omaha, and Roy owned the Toyota and the Ford dealerships. And if I could get Roy to be the finance chair for one of my candidates, I would know we'd raise at least $100,000 just from his Rolodex. Because he's, sold a car to half the city. He was on the hospital board, the chamber board, the opera board. So he has these great spheres of influence because all this is networking. So you're looking for somebody with those skill sets. So always try to find somebody in sales, and it doesn't have to be a wealthy person, right? I mean, give me a 26-year-old yuppie insurance agent who has no problems calling people and is organized. I'm happy with that. So we have a little pop quiz here. Hyatt Regency heiress Penny Pritzker served as Barack Obama's National Finance Chair in 2008. Why did she agree to take on this role? Well, people always give me different answers. You know, one of my favorite is, oh, well, she wanted the Obama people to stay at Hyatt's around the country so she'd be richer. And I'd have to point out that she's so rich, she doesn't care.
Right.
Right? And the story is this, and it's all fundraising is still personal. Many years ago, Michelle Obama's brother, Craig Robinson, was a basketball coach in Chicago. Craig Robinson coached Penny Pritzker's 2 sons in junior high basketball. So for many years, the Pritzkers and the Obamas would hang out in gymnasiums all around Chicago watching the kids play basketball. So when Juliana Schmood, who went on to be Obama's fundraiser in 2008, came in and said, who do you know? Let's get out, just like I do with him, let's get out your Rolodex, let's look at LinkedIn, let's look at who do you know, Christmas card list, and such. The Obamas said, we know Penny Pritzker, and you know, Juliana kind of rolled her eyes because Penny Pritzker would write a check, but had never really stepped up to the plate to do more. And the Obama said, no, here's the story. And Penny Pritzker went into that Obama's office and raised more than $16 million from her own friends, neighbors, and colleagues. She was that devoted. So it's important to know it's all about these personal relationships. It's all about leveraging. And a lot of people laugh when I go, you know, who even has a Rolodex anymore? Well, some people still do. For many of us, we use Facebook as our contact management, right? Who do we keep track of there? LinkedIn. You have to be creative. So you need to tell people, here's who you can reach out to. Church list, service clubs, JCs, Kiwanis, Rotary, Lions Club, certainly fraternal organizations, Knights of Columbus, veterans organizations, high school alumni, college alums. So there's a huge list. You all have your own spheres of influence. You need to learn how to tap into those.
This is a question from a man named Jim who is in Nebraska. And I know that you've traveled there many
Yes,
times.
I used to live there. Hello.
And he asks, he's a competitive grant writer, and he's asking if he's heard that there is a list that contains a listing of companies that are required to donate 5% of their net earnings to a charitable or nonprofit organization. Are you aware of the list, and would you recommend that list?
Well, I would first go and just visit foundationcenter.org if you're not familiar with that. Foundationcenter.org is the world's largest database and library of nonprofit information. They have information on more than 2 million organizations that provide grant money. Now, you can go to the site, and much of their site is free. I use it all the time. They do have a subscription service that is their database. So if I wanted to find out, I'm looking for organizations that will fund three-legged cat rescue in Ukraine. I could type that in a database and things would pop up. I mean, it's truly remarkable. So what I would do, Jim, go to foundationcenter.org, take a look at some of their collaborating libraries. Many public libraries subscribe to the Foundation Center database. So here in Arlington, I just sent interns down to the public library to do the research I need. I am not familiar with the specific list that companies that are required to give their money 5%, but I think the Foundation Center is a great start because you can take a look at people's 1099, or not 1099s.
The
990s? I'm doing my own taxes, so my world is 1099s right now. But take a look at the 990s to see, you know, who's on the board, who's giving away the money. But that's my best resource for you. I would not pay for a list. There's no other magic list. Go to the Foundation Center. It is the fountain of information.
Is that, by looking at the 990, and for those that don't know about it, it lists the top salary earners for an organization that's a nonprofit. Would you use that as a resource to find people that would be a member of your finance committee if they have like-minded Interests?
I would be more apt to take a look at not the leadership, but the people that serve on the board of directors. Because they list who's on my board. So I wouldn't go to the president of the United Way, but if I saw that, oh, I know this person who's on the local United Way in Omaha, wow, we go to church together, we go see the Huskers play football. So I'm looking for relationships on the board,
Okay.
not from the top leaders, because the top leaders are trying to keep their own doors open.
That makes sense.
So as we go to the next slide, another little pop quiz. Microsoft paid for a study of Fortune 500 execs. The question, what's more important, interpersonal skills or tech skills? Well, the answer is people skills by 61%. You are not going to tweet or text your way to millions. You are not Barack Obama, you are not Mitt Romney or John McCain. Less than 10% of all money raised comes from the internet. And in fact, it is constantly changing. It used to be you had to have a great website that said donate now. Now most of it is coming from personal email. So it would be Patty sending me an email asking me to give money to a campaign. It is a constantly moving target. I have a really great study of lessons learned from the Obama campaign, including what they were able to do with the internet. They found that every person, when they were trying, if you were an undecided voter, they could go in and Facebook reached 85% of the target market because everybody knows somebody. So Patty may be undecided, but if I'm a friend of hers, they reached out to me and said, will you reach out to Patty and persuade her?
And I will hang up on you.
Yes, you will. But it's a smart way to keep moving. So the other thing you need to know with the whole Finance Committee situation, as in your personal fundraising solicitation, is storytelling is the fiber of relationship building. Jerry Panis, who calls himself the maniac in chief at the Institute for Charitable Giving, is one of the top fundraisers in the world. And everybody has a story. And when you go in to talk to people, you need to tell your story. Your team has to know the story about you. It can't just be reading a resume going, you graduated from Texas Tech, right? I want to know personal things that you have done, because that's, as we were talking about going to Match.com for elevator pitches, fundraising is a decision of the heart, okay? It is not of the head. It is an emotional decision, and that heart is much closer to the wallet than the brain. And so those people need to really leverage their personal relationships with people to get them to open up the wallet to you. And a lot of people think that they can come in and they talk about issues and spending and the deficit, and people's eyes glaze over. What does this mean for my family? So it's always taking those very large issues and talking on a micro level.
So essentially, are you saying that a personal connection between the person asking for money and the person that will be donating the money is more important than shared views on policy?
I hate to tell you, but yes, it is.
Okay.
It is. Well, I'll tell you another story, because you know storytelling is the fiber of relationship building. When Rick Perry ran for president, in that nanosecond that he was the candidate, I knew Rick Perry would raise more money that quarter than any other candidate, and I think he raised $18 million. So the Wall Street Journal did an article and started phoning people who had given to Rick Perry. And Wall Street Journal reporter called some donor who started in on, you know, I hate Republicans. They are the scum of the earth, and just went on a tantrum, right? And the reporter said, but aren't you the, you know, Dick Smith that just gave money to Rick Perry? Of course I gave money to Rick Perry. We're both, you know, we went to Texas A&M, we're Aggies, and he was my fraternity brother. So keep in mind that personal relationships often trump party. And especially in the conservative community, that's a little hard for us to get our heads wrapped around, because we tend to be more issue-oriented. But it's important for you to figure out, you're going to have people who may not like you, but like your friend, and if your friend's supporting you, that person may give a donation or have a better view of you.
So a good narrative is better than a good reason.
Well, I hate to tell you that, but yes, I think the story of what you have overcome in your life, why you're doing what you're doing, is critical. Now, keep in mind, some people don't think that way, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, the Sheldon Adelsons of the world are giving $50 million because they care about the future of the country. I'm talking about people that you interact with every day. The ones, this is like selling Girl Scout cookies, but on a larger level,
Okay.
right? Friends help other friends. So one of the things that, of all people, Terry McAuliffe, who's a heck of a fundraiser but a horrible candidate, you know, he said anytime you can call versus sending a piece of mail, your response rate's going to go up 5 times. Being on the phone, visiting people really increases your rate of return. So it's so important for you to have those personal connections. Another gentleman coined this phrase, selling is about getting a bunch of no's so you can finally get to the yeses. If we know that really we're going to be thrilled if 2 out of 10 say yes, it's going to take a while for people to kind of get into the rhythm of how to ask for the money, how to close the deal, and moving forward. So people are going to say no, but you can't let it let you down, because the more people I phone, the more money I'm going to raise. And this comes to, you know, God gave us 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason. When you go in to see a donor, sending someone from your finance committee in, you know, you need to listen twice as much as you speak, because then you can zero in. And as Patty said, you know, there could be issues. If I'm talking to someone and they're talking about education, this is not the time for me to be talking about abortion. So I do want to listen carefully and tailor my sales pitch to reach and meet this person's needs. You need to take a look at what's in the office. If there's Jim from Nebraska, you know, in my car is my Cornhuskers Tom Osborne Memorial Cup, right? Because I used to live in Nebraska. So you have to be aware of what's going to grab someone's attention by making that emotional connection. I want you to replace cold calling with warm communication, because your ability to make those emotional connections with potential donors can move them from concern to passion to cash. And that's why your finance committee is so important. That person can reach out. So how do we recruit this finance committee? Well, I recruit a finance committee using 3 methods. But first, always the question is, how many people do you have on a finance committee? Well, I would rather have 30 on a finance committee with 25 people reaching the goals I've set than only ask 5 people and 1 person reaching the goals. So I have done races in rural Nebraska with 30 people on a finance committee, but I gave everybody a goal that could be reached. So I thought that was just very successful. Now, finance committees, you almost need to provide them with concierge service. Yes, it's cost effective because these people are volunteers helping you, but they still need stuff. If they want to send a letter to other insurance agents or doctors, you're going to have to write the letter, have them approve it, make sure all the disclaimers are on there. You're going to have to give them a kit, a marketing kit, because this is your sales team. You want to provide them with the candidate or the organization's biography or background information, something in there about legal requirements, because we can't take corporate checks and federal campaigns. So you want to provide them with the information they need. So when I start to recruit a finance committee, we go through the candidates' Rolodex, Facebook, LinkedIn, whatever I can do, their Christmas card list, and I recruit using these methods. And the first is recruiting by occupation. Who is the doctor, dentist, home builder, car dealer? Who are the people in your community that you know? Because there are now more than 6,300 political action committees out there. And almost every occupation has their own political action committee. So when I recruit by occupation, I can then have an introduction to a PAC, because you're not going to get a nickel from the American Hospital Association unless you have a local hospital administrator on your finance committee. But also, these folks have membership list. You know, every insurance agent knows every other independent insurance agent. So they have lists. They can reach out, send letters, make phone calls to share, hey, here's what we have in common. So I'm looking for that 1 degree of separation. So occupation helps me do that. I then recruit by region. If I'm in a rural community, I may have every county has someone who knows a lot of people, very active in church, school, whatever the activity. In a suburban area, I may have it by neighborhood. In a city, it may be by building. But I'm looking for people who are very active in their community who will reach out and pick up the telephone and call friends, neighbors, and colleagues. And then this kind of goes to Patty's point on interest area. There are those people who will only give money to you if they agree with you on an issue. So this is where you need to become the list collector. You know, you want to find who is the leader in the pro-life community, who's the leader in the NRA or gun owners, who's somebody who's big in the homeschooling community. If you, as a candidate or your candidate or organization share similar values, this is our point where we can reach in and reach out to those folks in that community. So yes, there are people that care about issues, but you have to know that there are other things that people care about at the end of the day. So, how do I make all of this work? I set a goal. Let's say I need you to go and raise $10,000 for me during the next 3 months. So $10,000, achievable goal, deadline, and it's about $3,300 and change. So we might go to Mr. Doctor and ask for $1,000, Mrs. Doctor for $1,000. This person may be able to get $5,000 from the American Medical Association. You may ask 4 friends to give $500 each, or you may have 10 people at your home at $100 each for a small home event. Now, obviously, the numbers here change, right? But it might be 1,000 from a pack, but you're going to get more. But I really sit down and train my sales force on here's the way you can go raise this money. Now, some people go, Nancy, $10,000, that's, you know, more than I'm going to spend on the city council race. Then you just take the zeros off. Can you help me raise $1,000? You can get 100 from Mr. Doctor, 100 from Mr. Doctor, and or Mrs. Doctor, and so forth. The technique is the same no matter how much money that you need to raise. Now, fundraisers have been using finance committees for many years, but it was George Bush who really started putting a name on this. When he first ran for president, he had the pioneers, and the pioneers were people who went out and raised $100,000. The second time he ran, he had the Rangers, and that was anyone that raised $200,000 or more. So Hillary Clinton had the Hill Raisers, and those people went out and raised $1 million. Now, Barack Obama, because he did not want to run the same campaign as Hillary Clinton, he had his own finance committee. They just didn't give a name to it. And what they did was they pitted Northern California against Southern California, or downstate Illinois with Chicago. But they also had their finance committee set up on a regional basis. Who took this to all new heights was Mitt Romney. And when he ran 4 years ago, Mitt sat down and communicated with all of his friends who were Fortune 500 CEOs, like Meg Whitman of eBay at the time, and other people, and said, fly to Boston, we're going to have a major call day. And he advised all of them to bring their Rolodexes, list of contacts. So all these folks went to Boston, sat in a big room. Everybody had their own desk. And it was kind of like a huge PBS marathon. And everybody started calling friends and asking for money from Mitt. And it was great. If somebody was calling and somebody would go, oh, you know, I really want to talk to Mitt about this issue, Mitt could run over and close the deal on the phone. So Mitt's friends raised him $6.4 million in one day. He did this again in Las Vegas during this last presidential run and raised more than $10 million in one day. Now, those are huge numbers, but think about how these folks leveraged their spheres of influence. I've done this in smaller campaigns where we've had the finance committee come in and just have a group call day. There was a race where we raised more than $30,000 in one day for a small race. When you're in a room and you've got your finance committee there, it's not as intimidating. I'm not sitting in my cubicle going, must make fundraising calls. Don't want to do it, right? It's becoming more fun. And so it's been very successful to really maximize and build that camaraderie of your finance committee by doing that. So it's critical that you have this team in place who has their own spheres of influence. And I'm happy to take some questions if you'd like.
Yeah, I do have a couple of questions. One is another question from Jim from Nebraska, and he's really asking if there are any other resources that are online that he can use to help raise money for his conservative organization, besides what we have at the Leadership Institute, which is fantastic resources. But if there are any other resources that you know of that someone could look at.
I think you just really need to take a look at if it's conservative causes. That's very different than a nonprofit. So I was thinking you were running, or, doing something for the Heart Association, right? So that's very different. There's been a huge Tea Party movement in Nebraska. There's you're really going to have to be at events where Lee Terry and other people go. You're going to have you've got all these races going on. You're going to have to be there, organically signing up people and bringing them to your cause. There is no magic list.
What do you say to people that think that they can raise this money overnight, that it's going to be very easy, but in reality it might take years and years? Morton Blackwell didn't have this building where we have the Leadership Institute for many years, almost 20 years after 15 years after he started the Leadership Institute. What's the best piece of advice you can give people about patience if they're doing organizational fundraising?
It is. This is, as in most things, this is a journey, not a sprint. You have to lay down a great foundation, start building your team, and bringing a core group together who share your personal commitment to this. And whether it is because of an issue, whether it's a cause, you then have to have these people, and you can more quickly build your base if you have people out there advocating for you. If you have that board of directors or that finance committee that's helping you grow that organization, because those people are so committed to what you're doing. Organizations can't be built overnight, but if you have good homework to start with, making sure that you've updated your Christmas card list, making sure you're on LinkedIn, who are you reaching out to on Facebook, starting to reconnect with people from your life. And Facebook, frankly, I thank Mark Zuckerberg every day for giving me Facebook, because it enables me to keep track of all the people I've met in my life, whether it's just remembering to send a birthday message every day or congratulations because that person has just gotten engaged or married. It keeps me connected with this person. And if you spend this time with friendships, relationships, one of the things I learned from Newt Gingrich many years ago is the listen, learn, help, and lead model. You need to appreciatively listen to what people are saying. So when you're listening to them, you're going to learn, right? I mean, if I go see a senior citizen, that person's always going to know more about Social Security or Medicaid than I am. So then you're listening, you're learning, and you're collecting information because you're talking and learning about issues that people really care about. So then you can figure out a way, how can I help this person? Can I make a phone call? If I run for office, I can use this as a story to inspire other people because I am actually listening to what people care about. Then all of a sudden you're leading, right? You may not even think you're a leader, but at the end of the day you're going, whoa, I have followers, and I want these followers to really be somebody who's part of this team. Mm-hmm. And so I've always kind of lived by that model of the listen, learn, help, and lead in every organization I work with.
It's fantastic advice. And one last question. If people are interested in your book, where do they get it?
Well, I have my email up on the screen. You can just pop me an email. I have a special Leadership Institute price of $32. Now, I want you to know that's less than 50 cents a page because I monetize everything in politics. And we've just recently, my graduate assistant, Melissa Zinder, did her thesis on social media and fundraising. And so I've added her 20-page thesis to the end of the book. So there's updated information through 2012 on how you can use social media to enhance your fundraising. But there's also a really good section in there about how do you put this sales team together for your campaign, because you're not going to be able to succeed on your own. There's only so many hours in the day. You have to have that support team there.
And one last question. What percentage of a candidate's time should they spend on fundraising?
Well, successful candidates spend 35 to 50% of their time raising money. It has to be built into their schedule each and every day. And if people go, I'll do anything but ask for money, then I go, okay, I hope you're really rich, because you're going to have to write a really big check. You've
right.
got to ask other people for help.
Well, Nancy, thank you so much for being with us
Absolutely.
this afternoon. I know I've been trying for months to get you up at the desk. And thank you for everyone that tuned
Thank
in
you.
this afternoon. This was recorded and it will be available in our archives under the resources tab, which is the online in the online training under the resources tab on our website. Thank you for tuning in, and we will see you the second Wednesday of April, where we will be talking about grassroots lobbying. Thank you so much and have a
Thank
great
you.
afternoon.
Bye-bye. Thanks, Patty.
Thank you.